Okay, I think we're ready. It's 5 on the dot. Let's start this thing. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am David, the program manager of this MIH for Startups program powered by Techstars. Today is the second of all of our masterclasses for the public. What we're trying to do here is working with MIH to engage with startups from across the world, giving out content like this to promote our program that is coming up in August, right? So if you didn't know, we are running a program alongside MIH specifically for electronic vehicles, EV, and opening that up. I'll let Joe talk about that more. But today it's about founders, all of you guys or people that are tuning in are interested in entrepreneurship. And what we want to do is give back, right? Have some dialogue about founders, about the platform, the EV platform as well, how that ties together, how there's synergy with that. So without further ado, let me talk a bit about Techstars. Jessica, can you help me do the slides? Thanks. Oh, that's me, by the way, if you haven't realized. Next slide. So this is a bit about Techstars, right? If you haven't known yet, thanks, Toby. If you haven't known, we are Techstars right here. We have around 50 accelerators across the world. I'm gonna mute someone, sorry. And what we do is we run mentorship-driven accelerators. And as you can see, big numbers here. But the main thing that we want to get across is we want to help entrepreneurs. We want to help them succeed, connect our global network of mentors and founders together. And this is what we're trying to do with MIH together with this program, right? So let me give the floor to Joe, who is our all-knowing MIH representative, amazing person. So Joe, we want to talk a bit about MIH and about our program.
All right. Thanks, David. Thanks for the introduction. So hello, hi, everyone. My name is Joe Chang. I'm the head of marketing at MIH, and I'm super excited today to see all of you here. So let me quickly share with you, who MIH is and why we are creating this startup program with Techstars. So MIH is an Foxconn initiative, and we are creating an open electric vehicle ecosystem that promotes collaboration in the mobility industry to lower entry barrier and accelerate innovation. So we currently have more than 2,400 members from around the world, and we're working together to realize key technologies and develop reference designs and standards through our 14 working groups, such as electric powertrain system, battery energy management, autonomous driving, smart cockpit, just to name a few. So MIH is super excited to be working with Techstars to create this MIH for Startups powered by Techstars program to drive innovation with startups around the world, as we believe that startups are the key to the future EV innovation. So this MIH for Startup program runs from August to October, and with a demo day in November. And so we're still, the application is still open until August 7th. So please, if you're interested in this program, please apply. And, in November, where we will be bringing the final teams to Taiwan, for the demo day, and the startups will have the opportunity to sit down with MIH to discuss proof of concept project opportunities, and to meet with a Foxconn investment team to discuss investment opportunities. So so if you're a startup working on EV related areas, we would love to have you join this MIH for Startups program. And the application link will be shared in the chat shortly, and we'll have some time to talk at the end more about this program. So, so today, is about founders, and without further ado, so let me give the floor back back to Techstars so we can focus on the founder story today.
Amazing. Thank you, Joe. So if you didn't hear Joe clearly, you're going to get free tickets to Taiwan if you win, right? If you apply, there's a chance. So get on that. If you're a EV related startup, don't be shy. Application links are down in that QR code there. And we're going to be sending that into the chat, right? But let's get to the main person we want to introduce today. Tobey. Tobey is an ex-colleague of mine. Introduction from him. He's going to talk about himself more, but he's been full circle, right? He's been an analyst at Goldman Sachs. He's been there. He's done IPOs. He'll talk about those too. He's been innovation at Techstars, so working a lot with founders. He's been a startup founder. He's been in the startup world as well. He went back to Stanley and Decker, which is one of our partners, and he did a stint as an EIR entrepreneur in residence to help founders. And something amazing happened there, and I'll let him talk about it. But without further ado, let me introduce Tobey Wood. He is the co-founder of Chargd, and he will be talking about how he joined Chargd and how Techstars Accelerators and this model can help founders improve and connect with people that they never thought they would. So thank you, Tobey, for sharing. I'll give the stage to you.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, thank you, David. Can you hear me all right, everybody?
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the kind introduction. And before I go any further, MIH team, Joe and Techstars folks, David, Jessica, Rosa, and Alison, thank you so much for having me today, and everyone who's attending and dialed in across the globe. Appreciate you all joining. Really excited to be here today and share more about my experience. As David mentioned, I've had a run of the gambit here, so I've done a little bit of everything along the way, and found myself right back here at Techstars a couple years later after being at corporate, and really excited to share my story, what we're doing with Chargd, and just, I think, really the opportunity in working with Techstars and these innovation programs. So I couldn't be more excited to be with you all today. Awesome. So David, I'm not sure if what's best to kick off here. Happy to kind of go through and share more about Chargd. Where would you like to start?
Yeah, let's start with the slides that you prepared. So let's go through Chargd and that story.
Amazing. Okay. So essentially, as David mentioned, I was working as entrepreneur in residence for this year's Stanley Black & Decker program, working with Lila Partridge, who I worked closely with when I was actually at Techstars as a corporate. Essentially came into this year's program super excited about electrification, and fantastic class. They have a great leads from the Stanley Black & Decker side. Mark Mayberry, CTO, Dr. Mark Mayberry, CTO and head of innovation, and Marty Guay, SVP of Biz Dev in the CEO's office. Two fantastic champions of the Techstars program on the Stanley side. And I think the beauty of working with the Stanley Black & Decker is, a lot of people think about just, power tools when they think Stanley Black & Decker, but it's actually quite a diverse business. And so the idea of working as EIR was really kind of this thought concept of, ever since I was at Techstars, I've been involved in one way, shape, or form throughout the Techstars network. And it's part of my way of giving back and being part of that community. And, I think it's been a really special experience. If we go to slide 2, let me talk a little bit about Rafael and Tomas, right there in the middle, the two original co-founders that were part of the program with Chargd. These two guys came into the program. I could feel their excitement. They're super young, significantly intelligent folks that have spent a lot of their years in academia looking at smart cities, computer science, applied physics. Two very intelligent guys. And what they were passionate about, they eat, sleep, and drink the future of mobility. And what was so fascinating when I was working with them, and what stood out, was honestly the fact that, I felt like they saw the forest beyond the trees. And I think between that and their dedication, it was a natural way that we all ended up actually coming together. And they convinced me to take the leap and come join, just because of our complementary skill sets that were very atypical, very different, but highly complementary and coming together and making Charged what it is today. And so, I can't speak highly enough of these two and what they're doing, and it makes me excited about the future visionaries. It makes me feel like an old man now. You guys can't see that my hair is going, but these two are something special, and they're what you find across all the founder groups in these Techstars programs. It is such a special experience that you can look at the same as the acceptance rate is, something as special as getting into an Ivy League in the States or doing something like that, or working at Goldman. This is something to me that holds a special place. And so, I guess without further ado, I'll take you to the next slide here and share a little bit about Charged. So when we came in, Charged was operating in Europe and we had a test bed live and essentially testing out this idea of running an Airbnb model for charging stations. So if you look at the electric vehicle market globally, level 2 charging stations, those are your slow trickle charge. It takes anywhere from muted. Can you guys all hear me now? And essentially, we worked through this problem statement and actually looked at the United States, which is super early in EV adoption at 2%, less than 2% EV adoption, and realized that people today are using an old world lens to a new world problem of EV driving. What does that mean? They're driving electric vehicles the same way they've driven ICE engines or combustion engines that are gas powered or diesel powered today. And so as a result, people are going to, over time, as EV adoption grows, become extremely inconvenienced. So we're already seeing that, and we're actually still at less than 2% adoption. That's rapidly increasing due to climate control and climate change initiatives around net zero carbon. And so actually, as a result, we see charge being inequitable, where there's costs for those that share public charger access, see 5 to 10 times the cost as somebody who has private access. There's uncertainty around capacity that's both at a macro and a micro level. So when can I charge? Where can I charge? How can I charge? How do I schedule it? It's chaos. And also the US grid infrastructure cannot support everybody charging at the same time. And then there's no single solution that exists. So I come from a finance background, so I often, use the example of comparing to the Bloomberg terminal in finance, but think of this as a single source of truth, no different that your smartphone enabled, right? Which is now, let's say your iPhone. I'm going to be a very American here, but your iPhone is your one-stop shop to have your phone, your email, your text, right? It's your single point of communication. And that's essentially what Charged saw the opportunity to become. If we go to the next slide here, our solution is this single source mobility platform that connects all these disparate stakeholders to establish one single charging experience that's built for everyone. And so this is where the concept of Raphael and Tomas having their applied physics and computer science backgrounds, as well as engineering, mixed with my commercial background as EIR, and Goldman Sachs and technology, different growth companies and exits. And essentially, we came up with a solution that's going to democratize charging, so to deliver equal access and cost, maximizing utilization. So it's not just about deploying chargers at a certain pace, but actually driving that utilization around the clock, and then adapting into each and every lifestyle. So essentially leave it to Charged to adapt while you adopt the consumer. And so essentially we've had some fantastic meetings, so many fantastic meetings with mentors across the Techstars community and investors. We're in discussions with major players across the industry who are all looking at this problem and saying, how do we not think of this? And I think that's something that you're going to constantly run into as a founder when you come up with something that is really forward thinking, is some people will not be there. Some people will think something is super simple and it's not. And you'll hear me say this again and again. There's a nuance in communication that's extremely important. And so what I can say to you is that that's the power of coming together and working through these ideas with these amazing Techstars resources and programs, is you get to really ensure that you're doing not just what you think is right, but what you know is right. And you know, that doesn't mean you won't change. The markets do change and adjust, but you're ready for it because of the way that it challenges you to evolve, right? You don't become complacent. And so super excited to share a little bit more about Chargd with you all today. I think the next slide is our product slide. I'll do it high level, but I really want to make this about the innovation process, and happy to chat with anyone further afterwards. But, you know, I think essentially your product is a connect all in one, right? So we're connecting all the different disparate stakeholders, charging infrastructure, vehicles, behavior integrations via external data sources, depending on the customer, and then utility data to create this basically combined powerful data set via Chargd AI that combines your telematics, your sustainability, your cost, your lifestyle around peak demand and predictive scheduling. So, you know, think of this as the piece in your equation where you no longer have to think about going to seek out your chance to book at a charging station. We're going to book it for you and seamlessly integrate into your life without it interrupting your day-to-day. And so this is something that people don't want to think about. We've had a lot of conversations across the markets where this is a constant and common thread that some people feel more than others today, but we know that is going to be an increasing problem. And we're excited to be able to do something to empower people to, you know, to really adopt this, we think, game-changing technology that's going to help really fight climate change and drive more sustainable and scalable behavior. And we think that's a really powerful piece, and super excited that we're able to do this with, the support of Techstars, Stanley Black & Decker. MIH has been a fantastic partner thus far as well. So really excited to share this with all of you. Without, I guess, further ado, I'll tie it into why we're here today, which is the next slide. With a quick Lego exercise. It's sorry, super lame. I guess I'm very nerdy, but the reason why I have this in front of you today is a little bit to really connect into kind of what my innovation experience has been like, that I think is a really important one here. You can rehearse, you can practice, you can understand a market like it's the back of your hand and be a mile deep in it. And you can still meet somebody along the way that doesn't connect or doesn't understand what the problem is you're trying to solve. And that's totally okay. But the important piece is the more that you go through these types of environments and the more meetings like this where you're poked and prodded and stretched and challenged, the better prepared you are for something in the future. And so I want to bring up a little quick Lego story. On the left, you see that there's Legos stacked. These are your classic 4x2 Legos that are stacked one on top of each other. And on the right side, you have the same 6 Legos, sorry, different colors, but they're the same exact blocks, and they're arranged in a lower profile and in a horizontal manner. There's same blocks, 2 different approaches, and actually they yield completely different outcomes. On the left, you have the original approach that Lego used in their 1974 patent, where they asked about the combinations for this 4x2 brick with eight dots. And they calculated, based on their mathematicians, about 103 million permutations or combinations. About 40 years later, there was a professor that was that's Swedish, that was walking in Legoland, saw the bricks, and saw in the original patent that there was this, you know, crazy specific 103 plus number, a million plus number for these permutations and combinations of these Legos. And he said, well, how did they get to that? Sounds like a really difficult equation. And 40 years later, he actually ended up figuring out that there's a flaw to the approach. He realized that they were only stacking these on a vertical manner. And the minute that he actually opened it up to also look in the second dimension, we'll call it, as a horizontal, you can actually, your outcomes actually change quite a bit to 915 million. And so what I want to share today, and I hope that resonates, is that there's always a different approach, and there's always a different viewpoint. And no matter who the founder is, who the leaders are, who the investors are, you're always going to hear a variety of inputs. And it's really important that you synthesize and take away what's important from those inputs. You might not always agree with it. you might not always want to hear it. But I think part of this process with Techstars that's so important is that it challenges you to understand the different nuance of approach. And that's what helps you fortify your product market fit. And I think I speak to that firsthand with what we've done with Chargd to date, and the amazing, traction we've had, and just, honestly, even thinking about seeing some of the folks at the beginning of the program, 2 weeks in, 4 weeks in, 10 weeks in, 12 weeks in, it's truly incredible. And I think that's the big advantage here of this program, is that access is unparalleled. So I wanted to share that today. But kind of, I guess we can go into our Q&A back and forth, David. I guess there's a couple topics we wanted to chat through, and happy to kind of speak to that.
Let's take the slides off so we can get into the meat of the dialogue for sure. Thank you for that sharing. And so the question for me to you is, like you said, you went from an EIR into a founder role. Right. Just to elaborate on this for people in this call is what happened was Tobey was part of the team running the accelerator, right? EIR meaning entrepreneur in residence, meaning he was that person that founders can go to throughout the program to be a guiding force, to be somewhere they can talk to, because Tobey has been there in their shoes as a founder, as an entrepreneur, and having someone with that same knowledge and that background, having that sounding board to guide them throughout that 3-month program, right? And so what happened during that session that gravitated you towards Chargd, these 2 young entrepreneurs within the cohort of 10, right? And how did that interaction go? And what happened in that program that led you to joining them after the cohort, right? And this is not something that is uncommon, right? We hear a lot in Techstars programs where maybe a mentor, not necessarily an EIR, but maybe a mentor or maybe an advisor or someone in the group joins a startup, right? Maybe an associate joins a startup, or maybe like you, an EIR. Like, what is that magic, or what's that chemistry that happens? Or maybe you can talk about yours, right?
Absolutely. So, essentially, I think titles can change. At the end of the day, it all comes down to the people culturally and who you are. And I think there's a commonality that you have across Techstars that is really this kind of founder first mentality. That is, what you put in is, 1/nth of what you get out. And if you lead with being kind and with generosity and genuine trust, I think it's really important. And what you see more times than not are that Techstars founders strike chords of empathy with leaders. And what that does immediately is takes, what I look at it is no different than what I try to do in my conversations as I built relationships with Goldman and with our clients across the world. It didn't matter who was in the room. The minute we could change the conversation from being having my shirt buttoned up all the way and my tie perfectly straight to actually unbuttoning it, letting my tie be a little bit looser, and just relaxing and having a conversation as 2 people, it didn't change the dynamic or the respect dynamic. It actually just opened up to have a true and honest conversation. And that's where I found, that I take that same approach when I work with founders. If you reach out to me, I might take a couple days to reply for whatever reason. I might miss it, nobody's perfect, but I'm a big believer in I will give somebody the time of day always, and the opportunity. And that goes back to how I found my way in this industry. Maybe that's like the right kind of segue here, but essentially with, I want to be able to answer your question, David, here. So the conversations with Tomas and Raphael went from 1 conversation a week to 3 conversations a week to 5 conversations a week to texting to asking questions. And it was more, I was motivated by their inspiration, but also their constant drive to become better, to understand more angles, and to play with the business model. And something that I found there was they were convicted in what they were building, convicted towards the outcome of making the world more sustainable and having EV be more affordable and accessible. but they were agile and they were malleable. And I think that's so important. We hear about startups pivot all the time. And so for guys that, are in their young 20s and don't have as much of the corporate experience, I looked at that and they saw kind of the perspective I could bring from my banking and investing background in Techstars as really complementary. And so, it kind of was the formation of what we have as our flywheel at Chargd today, where we aren't the best at everything as three individual co-founders, but we come together as a team and can divide and conquer. We communicate really well, whether that's across time zones, whether that is talking about the actual data science behind what we're doing, or talking about the commercial activity. We bring each other along the way and promote each other. And it's very similar to how when I played, soccer in college at the D1 level, it wasn't about who was the best on the team. It was actually about who the team, where were the weaknesses on the team and how could we complement one another to help fight that. And you're only as strong as your weakest team member. So I think that really, that embracing that value that's so core to them was really what brought us together.
That's perfect. And that's a nuance there that I want to highlight is throughout the program, and we can elaborate on that as well, is going into meetings or going into these connection points as individuals, right? Down to that barrier where you're not a founder, you're not an advisor, you're not a CEO. It's basically, what are you trying to build? And all of the people within that circle are trying to help you, right? And so I want to tie back into that program of a mentorship driven accelerator and how Stanley and Decker, like you said, had proponents and people that wanted to invest or be there to guide, right? So let's talk about entrepreneurship and what all of these people can do, but let's talk about mentorship and mentor whiplash, right? How did that happen? Like how does that happen in an accelerator form, or even just a program that Techstars is always embedding in, which is the mentors are the magic, right? And how does a founder kind of deal with whiplash? And we can talk about what mentor whiplash is basically what we do in these programs is we want to bombard the founder with as many different perspectives, right? From maybe the corporate side, for example, if it's MIH program, we're going to have people from Foxconn and MIH come in, give you feedback. We'll have people from Techstars side give you feedback, and they'll be drastically different, and it's intentional, right? But love to hear your thoughts about how to deal with that, and also what are the nuances there that people should have in mind when going into these connection building exercises.
Yeah, absolutely. So I say first and foremost, mentor whiplash is something that starts at Techstars, but on your founder journey and throughout being an entrepreneur, it doesn't stop, to be honest with you. People love to share their unsolicited, sometimes solicited and sometimes unsolicited advice. And sometimes there's great days and sometimes there's really hard days. But I think what the piece you have to remember about the Techstars program is it's a huge opportunity. It's a safe space. It's there for a reason. And, it's no different. And I'm going to keep going back because I'm totally boring here. I'm going to go back to, I guess, my heyday as a soccer player, but it's repetition, it's practice. And it's no different than what we did with founders at the IPO level. We would run them through the same slide deck that I could tell you like it was an old nursery rhyme, that I knew every single word and I knew what the script was behind it and how each of the strengths and weaknesses of all the different presenters. And we would still 12, 15, 16 weeks into the process, get the same presentation in front of different investors of a room of 20, and they would see the same 10 slides. They would come out, we meet with each of the different investors in the room, and they come out with completely different takeaways. And it would blow my mind as a banker at that point, because I'd be like, weren't we all just in the same room? Did we all not just see the same presentation that had the same verbiage? How do we have all these different takeaways and different understanding when literally the presenter said the same exact thing? And I think that's really important here. That goes back to the Lego example, and why I put it in front of all of you today is you can practice, you can rehearse, you can be poked and prodded in a million different ways in one. And I guarantee you a million and two is coming. It's not about understanding all the different outcomes, but staying true to your conviction and taking what's positive out of those interactions, right? Or even if you don't feel like it's positive at the moment, take it as a learning, right? So turn any point of failure, I don't like to use that word, but there's always something to be taken out of a meeting that will make you stronger. Doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to embrace it in the first 5 minutes afterwards. Sometimes you need to go for a walk or a run, or sometimes it's going to hit you a week later. Like this just happened to me a couple weeks back. And you have to realize that all of these different run-ins or uncomfortable conversations are the most important ones that you can have in your journey. And if there's any piece that I think that it's important, CEO and co-founder of Brian Chesky of Airbnb was talking about this. I want to say a couple of weeks back when he was talking about his founder journey for Airbnb, and he said that growing up he was non-confrontational. He didn't want to. Anytime that somebody had something negative to say, he was raised to avoid it. And he said at Airbnb when he brought in his first COO, she said, "What are you doing? You should be actually having conversations and spending more time with the people that have contrary views, because they're going to be your biggest champions going forward." And that's why Airbnb, I think, has actually really been so successful in these moments of strife. He leads with transparency and openness. And I don't think that's anything different than what we really push our founders within the Techstars programs to do, is be open, be vulnerable, but own it and push forward. And so I think if there's anything I say today, it's like, embrace the choppiness, ride the wave. It's sometimes you're going to be standing and sometimes you're going to be swimming, and sometimes you're just going to be floating along, but you're still riding the wave.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And now I want to tie it back to Chargd and talk about Chargd benefited a lot, right? They found a new co-founder within the program, which was you. And also the partners at Stanley Black & Decker, right? And the doors that those kind of partnerships or those kind of windows open in a sense, right? So let's talk about more, and it's kind of like to visualize what might happen and what is going to happen in the MIH program, where Foxconn and MIH come in and kind of lead and guide the startups, right? What kind of value or what kind of perspective did Chargd gain with a partner like Stanley Black & Decker as their corporate partners in that program?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's what I've learned, whether it was my time at Techstars or as a corporate or Goldman, and then now I've seen it from the other side of the aisle here working as EIR and now co-founder of Chargd, is people are genuinely interested at Techstars in making you successful. And sometimes I think the way that innovation works, people are always afraid of somebody trying to steal their IP or their idea, or think that competition is a bad thing, and think that doubt is something that any successful company doesn't necessarily go through these chasms of doubt. But I think when you work with such an organization like Stanley Black & Decker, there are, I believe it's over 60,000 employees worldwide. Huge organization. And there are more departments than I can name, which I'm sure Marty and Mark and Lila will probably kill me for saying, but there's constantly reorgs. These are global, multinational, Fortune 500 businesses, right? These are some of the biggest in the world. And to go through any corporate innovation process, right, is a struggle for somebody inside the company, let alone a little startup outside the company going through something like this for the first time. And I think what you end up finding in the Techstars program, not just your program, but you connect into already the broader Techstars ecosystem, is that people that are there, people that participate in this mentor madness, are genuinely there to open doors And I think that's why I shared before the piece that stuck out to me about Tomas and Raphael in the beginning, where they struck a chord that was of interest. I opened the door and they followed up. They kept their word and they came back. And that tenacious energy, I fed off of it as well, right? It's contagious. And I think you feel when you have Techstars partners and corporate innovation teams, they're all structured in a little different way. There's obviously different personas you're going to deal with, and that's no different no matter if you're a public company, a private company, you're in Taiwan, you're in Chicago, you're in London. It doesn't matter. Every corporate is a beast of its own. And I think when you work with the folks who champion the program, they're there to help you. They're there to support you. And so from that perspective, this kind of goes back to the same equation that we're all talking about. It's all about your approach. It's not going to be perfect every time. Every meeting's not going to be 100% perfect, but you have to be open to being coached. You have to be open to taking feedback and iterating. That's what people want to see. They want to see, they're not looking for gaps, right? They want to celebrate your gains. And they're obviously committing their time, their capital, whatever it might be, to support you in your efforts because they believe in you and they believe in what you're capable of, even if sometimes you're questioning yourself.
Amazing. Let's open up the floor to questions for Tobey. If anyone has questions, raise your hand. If you have, you can't talk, type it in chat. If not, we'll keep riffing off each other, but we'd love to have your questions and things that you would love to ask Tobey. So keep those coming. If not, I would love to talk more about what Chargd is doing, right? And how after the program, post-program, right? How has that relationships and the connections they've built through that program? Who's that? It's okay. No one heard that. No one understands that either. So tying it back, post-program, how has those doors opened, or what are the things that are still benefiting from that relationship with Stanley, and how does that, how maybe mentors, maybe advisors, maybe connections, maybe examples to just let them feel it's all not just about the program, it's about the relationships and the people you meet in the programs, right?
Yeah, look, I think you couldn't have said it any better, David. There, relationships are what build the foundation for whether you are a public operator, a private operator, an entrepreneur, a doctor. They're what make the foundation of how we collaborate together as human beings. We're humans. This is, at the end of the day, everything is this innovation is human-centered design, right? When you're making something better, you're curating it to the needs and wants of that audience and those stakeholders. And so I think the really important piece in all of this is that no one's expecting you to be perfect 100% of the time. That's not reality. People realize that maybe sometimes they're going down this path with you for the first time. You're in it together. Other folks are trying to lead you down so that you can understand it because they don't want to take away from your learnings. And so to that perspective, the same thing that we're doing at Chargd, we've had, I wouldn't call them as much as pivots, but there's slight changes that we've made. There's a slide that we've pulled out. There's an extra hour we've spent with an investor. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, but where you actually have to accommodate to the needs of the audience. And so, after this program, I would say every day, seriously, it's July 20th and demo day was May 25th. Is that right? For the last, literally every day since demo day, I've had people reach out, whether they were at the demo day, whether they were connected and talking to one of the mentors that we were working with and wanted to learn more. I'm talking to other companies that are in the program for Techstars and trying to supercharge them into my network and connect them to folks that I think would love to be meeting with them, right? It's this constant kind of evolution and cycle that never stops, and it doesn't feel like work. Like I could be working if I wanted to 20 hours a day here and on no sleep. But if David reached out to me and said, hey, what do you think about this? I'll give him 5-10 minutes or whatever he needs. And guess what? If I promise something, I keep my word. And I think that's what you find, whether you're talking to the CTO of a Fortune 500 company or senior vice president. Marty and I text. He probably regrets that now, and I'll say that here on it because he'll watch this later. But no, but I mean it. Like people take a personal interest in you because they want to shepherd and see you succeed, really, in this environment.
Perfect. I think this is a great session for the fellow founders on the call. Just to point that to the ground, which is when you talk to people, when you connect to them as the people, right? Break down that facade, break yours first, and they'll follow. I say it's a really good tip there. Break that initial ice right down and then, and that will kind of build relationships from then on forward. Adam, please ask your question. I see that you want to ask a question. We need questions.
Yeah, hi, Toby. It's Adam Cook from Nomad General Trading in Dubai. So I just wanted to see how far-reaching would your expertise reach over to the Middle East region?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of what I think is part of the value of Techstars is we have this global network of really diverse skill sets and arrays. And so from that perspective, I've been a global generalist my entire career. So I've done global deals and global innovation. It's always, for me, it's always about taking the time to understand what the needs are, right? It's a needs assessment that starts every conversation and an open dialogue. And usually, it absolutely extends worldwide. And if I'm not the right person for you, I'll be the first one to tell you and raise my hand and say, but let me get you someone who is, by better understanding your needs. There's no such thing, I think, as wasting your time in this network of Techstars. And I'll say that I was telling this to David, and I think he'll resonate with it as well. Since I started at Techstars Corporate, I'm the network that we build and the people that reach out and on a daily basis is truly unbelievable. And that's something that I think I'll be more than happy to connect further afterwards. I'll have David, I'm sure, and team I'm happy for them to share my information. I would love to chat further in any way.
Okay, the survey has popped up. We're looking to, we are setting up a new EV factory here, which is partly UAE government. Our engineers that are coming in from all over the world are deeply experienced. But this market is, it will be a fresh growth for this market. So there's very little high-tech engineering happening in the Middle East region until now, except for construction, where we're probably market leaders with all the amazing architecture that goes up here. But the growth from here, I think, will be very, very rapid, which will be very visible next year. We need to open the door with a lot of new, for us, new industry service providers, product from everything from making the smallest grommet or washers to dealing with Mercedes and Siemens and Foxconn. So
I'd love to chat further. I think the beauty of this is that I would say, for take any of your network equations, right? Like with Uber, right? After you had your first rider take three trips, they were sticky. With the Techstars piece, it's like one person you meet opens, I would say, 3 doors plus. And so there's already at least a short list, if not longer than a short list, of folks that I think would be really interested in connecting, and I would love to as well. I always love helping connect folks across the globe to make a difference, and super excited to hear more about what you all are up to.
Sure. Yeah, that's why we're all coming here and using this unique and excellent platform through MIH.
Yeah, there's such value to it, just because at the end of the day, it's something that we're all building towards. There's always a nuance that it exists, right? Somebody's has a different skill set, but in terms of driving that consistent EV experience in the future of mobility, people need to trust what they're adopting, right? And so there's this huge value of really driving technological innovation to drive the gap, right? Of how you can, we're not talking about changing behavior at scale, right? But how can we help make that paradigm shift easier, right? Because this is transformational innovation, and it's not just about creating new ways for people to drive vehicles. It's actually entirely new way to interact with infrastructure. And so super excited to hear more about what you all are up to, and happy to help further. Thanks for the question.
Amazing.
Oh.
We have time.
What exactly could you bring to the table for corporates in the EV industry in the Middle East?
Yeah,
I missed the beginning of this seminar, so I didn't see the actual service offering.
Oh yeah. So essentially, I'm happy to send some follow up here, but Chargd is an EV mobility software application that's basically supposed to tie in and be your single source of truth for all your mobility needs. So essentially connecting your disparate set of stakeholders, whether they're public entity, private entity, charging owner, operator, drivers, utility grids, regulators, to all have a single source of truth and make data-driven decisions around the future of mobility. And we see a lot of opportunity in just taking these disparate and fragmented array of systems that exist out there and having this all consumed via this single pane of glass, right? And it's meant to basically edit your approach to amplify your returns, right? As you have this paradigm shift you're dealing with a bunch of new technological innovation, let's keep that all centered and standardized so that we can really, it's not just going to benefit you today, but tomorrow and the future. Happy to share more with it, but super excited about what we're doing.
Sure, I've posted my email there, so
okay.
if any one of you would like to communicate with us, that would be fantastic. That's why we're all here for.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that.
We have time for one more question. So if anyone has questions, this is your time to shine. If you don't, forever hold your peace. So one more question from the audience. Anyone?
And maybe before the questions come in, I would just like to kind of add on to what Tobey was saying earlier. I mean, we're all in this transformation together, going into electrification of the vehicles. And, at MIH, we really want to create this open platform to bring everyone together so that there is a level playing field for everyone to work together and to innovate on. As the automotive industry has been around for a very long time and has this tier system of the different suppliers, an existing way of working together, and it has been difficult for new players and startups trying to get into this ecosystem. So this initiative that we're doing here at MIH with Foxconn backing it up is that we want to transform this industry so that there is an opportunity for startups which we believe will be the future key to the future EV innovation to easily come in. And just to have a few examples is that Chargd, the super awesome startup that we would love to get engaged with them more and more and through this program. And also just as some other examples, as within the MIH consortium and the working and the different groups, we're definitely working with a lot of the major corporations, but also we're specifically, love to work with startups. And just to give a few examples that, we have a few startups that's working very closely with us. One is like a startup in Japan called Tier 4, working on autonomous driving, who are driving our autonomous driving vehicle, autonomous driving working group. And there's another startup from Korea called DreamAs. They're working with us and the smart cabin working group, innovating on the user experience within the smart cabin. And we also have another startup from Taiwan called Sebavo. They're working with us on decentralized identity, helping us to build the foundation for the decentralized identity framework and security mechanism that's going to be built on top of this open platform. So these are just examples of, through this platform, we're not just working with big corporations, but really the startups that's bringing innovative ideas. We're integrating them into our working groups and platforms so that they would have the level playing field to be working with companies, big or small.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I think the other piece that's what Joe just said is so important, because it really is. It's about leveling the playing field. Like, we're going through the largest shift in terms of mobility since the creation of the combustion engine, right? So that's 120 years of behavior that we've used since, right? We shifted from the horse and carriage to the gas powered engine. And, I think when you think about that change, having an open platform, we have this opportunity to write what expectations and what that foundation looks like, right? And we run into this, and I think this is something, Joe, we spoke about the first time we met with Jack as well. And it was about, people don't know what they need, let alone what they want, right? And I think having this open consortium was where we struck this off in the first place was, why can't we drive what the standard looks like? What does that standard look like? And so I think being an innovator, I think that's an entrepreneur, and I think just in genuinely seeing that future mobility, it's an exciting piece to be a part of, right? The future, who gets to do that? So really, sorry, you said it way better than I did.
Well, that's a good way to end everything. So thank you guys all for coming. I'm gonna pull up application links again. So if you're interested in applying, if you're interested in learning more, go to the MIH for Startups website, which is in the link. Jessica shared it. Also, application links are there as well. Next slide. Let's go down. This will be our next speaker, Ted Cervinski. He was the managing director for Detroit. And if you know, Detroit is the home for a lot of big car companies. And he's invested in a lot of mobility companies, because he's basically ran the Techstars mobility in Detroit for several years, right? So QR code, link, that's the sign up for the Eventbrite. Get your hands on this while it's hot. Ted will be talking about a lot of the trends and the investments he's made in the mobility sector. Be a very interesting one to talk about. Last slide. Let's go back to the applications and the website. Learn more about MIH through this website. Learn more about the program. Apply today to get into the sweepstakes of getting to Taiwan for free, right? Getting to work with MIH, getting to work with Foxconn, and learning more how to collaborate will be invaluable if you are in that industry of EV or mobility, right? So be sure to sign up and learn more. Happy to talk to you guys or connect after this. So ping us if you want. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you, Tobey, for today. Thank you for the sharing. Thank you, Adam, for the questions. Thank you, Joe, for the insight. I hope a lot of people learned a lot about Techstars and MIH through this progress, and that dialogue that we had right at the end with Adam and Tobey is what we're working on, right? These things happen for a reason. We connect each other for a reason. And thank you guys for joining. I'll see you guys next time, which is next week. So thank you guys.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Thanks, Toby.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good.